Chuck Norris walked into a high school where kids run wild, teachers cry in storage closets, and respect's been buried 6 feet deep. But when the legend shows up, these punks are about to learn the kind of lesson you don't get from textbooks. If that hit you right in the gut, drop a like, leave your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more, because the next part, it gets even darker.
Hold still, Dad. This thing won't sit right.
Emily stood on her toes, fiddling with the collar of Chuck's old jacket. The thing had been through decades of war, sunblood, and God knew what else, but he still wore it like a badge. The buttons had long since faded, and the elbow patches were barely hanging on, stitched over and over with hands that had known both gentleness and war. He watched her hands, steady, precise, a quiet version of her mother. "You don't have to do this, you know," Emily mumbled, stepping back. "That school's a dump. Everybody says it's worse than juvenile hall now, full of delinquents, druggies, and wannabe gangsters. It's not a school anymore." Chuck grunted. "No, really. You don't have to prove anything. You're Chuck Norris. I mean, you could have retired 20 years ago. You saved enough lives for all of us to live 3 of them without ever working again." She tried to keep her voice light, but the strain was there just beneath her smile. Chuck took a deep breath, rolled his shoulders, and looked at her. His eyes weren't tired, just quiet. The kind of quiet that came from carrying too much for too long. "It's not about proving anything," he said. "Your mom and I met in that school. That place gave me more than an education. It gave me her. It gave me you. I won't let it rot into a stain on this town." Emily lowered her eyes. "So you're going back because of Mom?" "I'm going back because she believed in second chances," he said softly, "and because I'm not dead yet." She didn't say anything more, just hugged him, and he let her. Chuck didn't usually show much when it came to touch, but for his daughter, he allowed those moments. That morning, Chuck walked into Lincoln High with his steps slow, deliberate. He didn't limp, though he had every right to. His knees had seen war zones, mountains, alleys, and asphalt, and now for some reason he felt they were walking into the worst place of all in American high school in 2025. The halls were a mess. Trash cans overflowed. Gum dotted the floor and walls. Fluorescent lights flickered like they were too scared to stay on. Graffiti crawled across lockers, tags, slurs, crass jokes, crude anatomy scrawled in black markers and broken minds. A locker door slammed. 2 boys in hoodies shoved each other near the stairwell, laughing hard and loud. Chuck stopped, eyes narrowing. One of them glanced up, then snorted. "Yo, is that the janitor?" Chuck kept walking. A girl sprinted past her phone, blasting trap music headphones dangling around her neck. Her skirt was too short, her eyes too hollow. He saw no teachers, not one. Just clusters of teens grouped like wolf packs, glaring at anything that walked by. When he reached the principal's office, the glass door was cracked. One corner still had duct tape from a fight last semester or maybe last week. He knocked once, then walked in. Principal Lanning stood up fast, late 50s balding cheap tie eyes red like he hadn't slept since 2018. "Mr. Norris," he said, offering a hand too eagerly. "It's a privilege, a real honor." Chuck shook it, firm, not friendly. Lanning gestured toward a coffee-stained armchair. "Please have a seat. Look, I won't sugarcoat it. This school's hanging by a thread. We've lost 38 teachers in 2 years, 3 last semester alone. Some retired early, some, well, they just stopped showing up." He sat back, wringing his hands. "I'll be honest with you. We didn't call you because we thought you'd solve everything. We called you because, frankly, you're the last card we have. Your name still means something. These kids, They don't respect teachers anymore, but they know who you are. They grew up on memes about you punching tornadoes." Chuck replied, frowning slightly. "Let the kids say what they want. I'm just here to teach them how to stand on their own." Lanning chuckled nervously, not sure if it was a joke. "Anyway," the principal continued, "we're putting you in charge of martial arts and physical development. You'll get the old gym. It's mostly empty. The old coach left after his car got keyed twice." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "And Mr. Norris, watch your back. This place ain't like it used to be. You're walking into a lion's den." Chuck didn't respond right away. He just nodded, stood up, and walked out the same way he came in. By second period, Chuck had already witnessed 3 fights, 2 drug deals, and 1 teacher breaking down crying behind the vending machine. But none of it quite stuck with him like what he saw near the end of the west hallway. There was a door half open, room 3B. Inside, a tall teenager was standing over a cowering man. The kid was clean-cut, wore a pressed button-down, and had that smug look like he owned everything he stood on. "I said pass me," the boy growled, "or I'll make sure you're the next one packing boxes." The teacher, a balding man with thick glasses and coffee breath, trembled as he tried to answer. Peter, I can't. You're failing the exam." "You think I give a damn about your exam?" Peter's voice had dropped to a low growl now. His body leaned in all tension, coiled and ready. The teacher, a wiry man in his late 40s, glasses sliding down his nose, instinctively took a step back, one hand half raised in protest. Peter didn't back down. His hand shot upward in a tight fist, fast and mean, aiming straight for the man's jaw. The teacher flinched, both hands rising now, palms open, too slow, too scared. But the punch never landed. A blur of motion came from the doorway, Chuck. He was there in an instant, hand clamping down around Peter's wrist mid-swing. The hallway fell silent. Peter turned, eyes wide for the first time, not in fear, not yet, but surprise. Shock, maybe, that someone had grabbed him. Chuck didn't say anything at first. His grip was calm, deliberate. Not tight enough to hurt, but strong enough to say, "This ends here." "Let go," Peter hissed. Chuck's voice was quiet. Too quiet. "Put your hand down." For a long second, neither moved. Then Peter slowly lowered his arm, and Chuck let go just as slowly. The teacher backed away, breathing hard, hand to his chest. He didn't say thank you. He just stared, trying to understand what had just happened. Peter rolled his shoulder, cracking his knuckles like it meant something. He gave Chuck a slow smile, like someone sizing up a new opponent in the ring. "Well now," he said, "guess the rumors are true." The word wasn't loud, but it landed like gravel in a tin can. The boy turned. Cold eyes. A flash of annoyance. Then, realization. A pause. A grin. Not fear, something worse. Mockery. "Well, well. Look who it is," the boy said, taking a casual step toward Chuck. "The roundhouse king himself. Didn't think you'd actually show." He offered a hand like a buddy. Chuck didn't take it. The boy pulled his hand back and slapped it playfully against Chuck's shoulder instead. "You know you were like a meme god when I was 10. My dad used to say, that guy could kill you with a stare." He looked Chuck up and down like a hawk sizing up an old bird. Peter leaned in face inches from Chuck's, his voice low. "Good luck, Mr. Norris. You're gonna need it." He walked past, slow and smug, like a cat who'd scratched the dog and didn't care if it got bit later. Chuck stood there a moment longer. His jaw clenched, his hands behind his back. He looked at the trembling teacher, nodded once, and walked away. Outside the room, the bell rang. Kids flooded the hall and the noise swelled like a riot on repeat. Chuck kept walking, his footsteps steady, his eyes sharper than they had been in years. There was something broken in that place. Not just the walls or the teachers or the kids. Something deeper. And it wasn't going to be fixed with rules and lectures. It was going to take something harder, older, quieter. And it started today. After hours, Chuck pulled the door shut behind him with a tired click. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the old refrigerator and the gentle creak of floorboards as he made his way toward the kitchen. Emily was already setting 2 plates on the table: meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans straight from the can, the usual when she cooked. She wasn't a chef, but she was a comfort. That was enough. She didn't look up when he walked in, just slid a fork into place and said, "So, how was it?" Chuck took his seat without answering right away. He looked at the food like he was trying to remember what hunger felt like. Then he rubbed a hand down his face, fingers pressed hard into his temples. "Tougher than I expected," he said. "Place is worse than I thought. Whole damn system feels like it's been left out in the rain too long." Rot set in. Emily finally sat down. She watched him for a beat too long, then scooped a bite of mashed potatoes, chewed slow, swallowed slower. "I figured," she said softly. "I heard rumors, saw stuff online. Kids filming fights, teachers getting shoved. Guess I hoped it was all blown out of proportion." Chuck didn't reply. He was staring at a grease stain on the tablecloth. It looked like an ink blot test. He blinked. She tilted her head. "You okay?" He nodded. One small nod. "You don't look okay." Chuck let out a breath through his nose, not quite a sigh. "They're not just rowdy. They're broken and angry. And they don't even know why." Emily put her fork down. She didn't say anything for a moment, just reached across the table and touched his knuckles with her fingertips. "Mom would be proud," she said. "She always said the hard work nobody sees is the work that matters most." Chuck cracked a half smile barely. "I mean, not that she wouldn't tell you you're a stubborn old fool too," Emily added, a little grin coming through. "But proud. Definitely proud." He looked up at her finally, and there was a warmth in his eyes that hadn't been there when he walked in. Something lighter. She leaned back and pointed her fork at him. "Now, in more important news, I'm pretty sure the neighbor's dog has a crush on me." Chuck blinked. "Come again?" "Yeah. The Labrador across the street. Rex. Every time I take out the trash, he does that thing where he sits like a statue and just watches me, tongue out, tail wagging like he's at a rock concert." Chuck let out a small laugh. "His first all day. That's not a crush. That's a bribe. He wants snacks." She shrugged. "Same difference. It's still more attention than I've had from most men in the last 6 months." Chuck shook his head, chuckling under his breath. "You deserve better than some tail-wagging, freeloading mutt." Emily grinned wide, and for a moment the day faded just a little from Chuck's shoulders. But it wouldn't stay gone for long. The next morning brought no relief. If anything, the school looked worse in daylight. The halls were louder, smellier. There was a tension in the air, like something about to snap, and Chuck knew that tension. He'd seen it in war zones, in prisons. Now it hung in a place that used to teach kids about photosynthesis and fractions. By mid-morning, Chuck had already broken up 2 fights outside the cafeteria. One involved a plastic fork and a bottle of hot sauce. He didn't ask. But it wasn't until 3rd period that he saw what real fear looked like. Not the loud, performative stuff, no posturing or threats. Just one teacher sitting alone in a dark storage room, hands trembling as he tried to light a cigarette with fingers that wouldn't hold still. Chuck didn't say anything, just stood there a second, then turned and walked on. He understood, and he wasn't ready to pity the man. That afternoon, Chuck passed room 207. The door was half open, and inside he saw Peter Stegman surrounded by 3 of his boys, lean, sharp-eyed kids who looked like they'd been raised on jailhouse stories instead of storybooks. One had a switchblade in his hand, just flipping it open and shut, like it was a fidget toy. Another was holding someone's backpack upside down, shaking it hard while laughing. On the floor, a kid freshman maybe curled into himself, hands over his head. Books, papers, pens scattered around him like debris after a small storm. Stegman wasn't laughing. He wasn't even smiling. He was calm, cold eyes fixed on the kid like he was inspecting a piece of furniture he didn't like. "You think this school protects you?" he said, voice low. "You think Chuck Norris is gonna save your sorry ass every time you piss someone off?" The boy whimpered something. Maybe no. Maybe please. It didn't matter. One of Stegman's boys stepped forward, reached down and pulled the freshman up by the collar. Chuck had seen enough. He entered the room like a draft of cold air. Quiet, steady, immovable. "Put him down," he said. The one holding the freshman froze. Stegman turned slowly, almost lazily, like he already knew who it was. "Mr. Norris," he said, voice smooth. "Didn't see you there." The boy dropped the freshman. The kid hit the ground with a thud and scrambled back into a corner. Chuck's eyes scanned the room, no teachers, no cameras. Just him and them. "You're not allowed in here," Stegman said. "This is math period. You don't teach math, do you?" Chuck didn't answer. His stare stayed fixed. "I was just helping this little genius here with his homework," Stegman added. "He's having a tough time understanding negative consequences." Chuck took a step forward. "Not fast, just firm. You don't touch another student again," he said, "or we'll have a different kind of conversation." One of the boys flinched. The one with the knife put it away. Stegman smiled, slow and toothy. "You gonna hit me, Mr. Norris? That what you do? Beat up kids now?" Chuck's jaw clenched. For half a second he felt the old fire rise up, hot, fast, familiar. His hands wanted to act. Every muscle told him he could end it here in one move. But that's what they wanted. They wanted him to snap. He exhaled through his nose, looked straight into Stegman's eyes and said nothing. That silence spoke louder than any punch. Stegman tilted his head, that smirk still tugging at his lips. "Man," he said, "you're good. Real good. But you'll crack. Sooner or later." Chuck turned to the boy on the floor. "Get out of here." The kid bolted. Chuck looked back at the group. "School's still in session. You've got 5 minutes to be where you're supposed to be." The others left. Stegman lingered, just long enough to make sure Chuck saw the contempt in his eyes. Then, he was gone too. That night, Chuck sat alone in the garage with the lights off. Emily had gone to sleep early. The tools on the wall hung in silence. The punching bag, old and scuffed, swayed a little in the stale air. He stared at it unmoving. His hands twitched once. Rain came sometime after midnight. The roof ticked with it soft at first, then harder like the house was being reminded of all the years it had weathered without complaint. Chuck sat by the window, arms folded, watching the neighbor's floodlight flicker through the downpour. The streets were empty, but inside his head, everything was moving. He hadn't told Emily about what happened in room 207. She didn't need that weight. Not now. Not while she was still holding this house together with jokes and canned green beans. But the memory played back again and again. Stegman's smirk, the silence before the boy ran out the knife flipping like it had no real meaning. Chuck had seen worse. But not in a classroom, not with teenagers. And worse was coming. He could feel it. The next morning, things felt off. It wasn't just the weather, though. The clouds hung low like they were waiting for something ugly to happen. It wasn't the halls, either. Those had always been noisy, chaotic, reeking of too much cheap cologne and not enough structure. No, it was something in the way people moved. The way students stared at Chuck just a second too long. The way teachers looked away entirely, like everyone had read a memo he hadn't seen. Chuck kept walking, his boots echoing on the linoleum. Second period passed without trouble. Third, too. He started thinking maybe he was wrong. Maybe the storm he'd felt wasn't coming. But in the fourth period, it hit. He was on his way to the faculty lounge, a small, stale room with a vending machine that never worked, and a coffee pot that hadn't been cleaned since the Bush administration, when he heard a yell. Not a fight yell, not the usual posturing. A sharp, raw shout. He turned the corner fast. There, at the end of the hall, a boy was on the floor, blood streaming down his temple. Another student, one of Stegman's lieutenants, a kid named Miko, stood beside him, face white, hand shaking. A piece of broken glass on the floor gleamed red. People were already gathering, pulling phones from their pockets, filming like vultures. And just as Chuck stepped forward, just as he knelt beside the injured student, Stegman appeared from the crowd, calm as always, arms crossed. "He did it," Miko said, pointing straight at Chuck. "He grabbed me. He threw him down." A silence fell over the hallway. Chuck didn't speak, didn't move. He looked at the boy's head wound. Not fatal, but deep. A clean slice, done on purpose. He looked at Miko, the way his voice shook just enough to seem real, the way he didn't look at Chuck, only the crowd. Then he looked at Stegman. The boy smiled, small, controlled, just a slight twitch of the lips. And in that instant, Chuck understood the play. They wanted him suspended, or better, fired. They'd staged it. All of it. And they were damn good at it. By noon, Chuck was sitting in Principal Lanning's office, hands folded in his lap, jaw clenched. Across from him, Lanning sighed into his coffee cup. "Look, Chuck, you know I've got respect for you. You've seen things I couldn't handle for 5 minutes. But this..." He tapped a manila folder on his desk. "It's serious." "I didn't touch him," Chuck said. "I believe you," Lanning said, almost whispering. "But that doesn't mean I can ignore it. Parents are calling. We've got a bleeding student, a shaky witness, and a hallway full of kids filming you standing over him." Chuck leaned back. The chair creaked. "That was the point." "I know," Lanning said. "But it doesn't matter. Optics win now." They sat in silence. After a long pause, the principal sighed again. "I won't suspend you. Not yet. But I've got to file the report. The school board's going to be breathing down my neck by morning. You might want to step back. Just for a while. Let things cool off." Chuck stood up. "They don't cool off," he said. "Not with kids like that." Lanning didn't argue. Later that day, Chuck walked through the back courtyard of the school, the quietest place left. It was overgrown, fenced off with rusted chain link once used for track practice, and now forgotten like the rest of the school's better days. He found himself staring at the old gym wall where the school used to paint victory banners. Most of them had peeled off, but one remained faded and cracked. "Discipline is strength." He almost laughed. Almost. A crunch behind him. Footsteps. He turned. Stegman. Alone. "Nice show today," the boy said, hands in his pockets. "Got the whole school buzzing. I'm thinking of starting a YouTube channel. How to get a legend fired in 3 easy steps." Chuck didn't answer. "You don't look surprised," Stegman said. "I'm not," Chuck replied. Stegman smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You came in thinking you'd fix this place with discipline and honor and roundhouse kicks. But it's not the 80s anymore, man. This isn't a dojo. It's survival." Chuck stepped closer, slow measured. "You hurt that boy." Stegman tilted his head. "Did I?" Chuck's eyes narrowed. "Why?" The boy's voice dropped. "Because I wanted you to lose." Chuck didn't flinch. "That why you dragged a scared freshman across the floor last week? Because of me?" "That was personal," Stegman said, grinning. "He said your class made him feel safe." Chuck's hands tightened into fists. His knuckles cracked. Stegman noticed. "There it is," he said. "There's the rage. I knew it was in there. That's why people watch your movies, right? The explosion. The punch. You can't help it. You were built for it." Chuck's voice was quiet. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough," Stegman said, and for the first time his smile faltered just slightly. "I know you're tired. I know this school smells like something you've already buried once before, and I know you're about one insult away from doing exactly what I want." Chuck took one more step forward, close enough now that the kid had to lift his chin to look him in the eye. Then he stopped and didn't speak. Stegman blinked. Chuck turned and walked away. That more than any punch was what made the boy's smile fade entirely. That evening, Chuck sat on the front porch watching the rain roll down off the awning. Emily brought him a cup of coffee, didn't say much, just handed it to him and leaned against the railing. After a minute, she asked, "Bad day?" He sipped the coffee, swallowed slow. "Yeah." "You gonna quit?" Chuck shook his head. "Not yet. Then you better start writing lesson plans for war." He looked at her surprised. She smiled. "You think I don't see what's coming? I may not be a soldier, Dad, but I can read a battlefield." Chuck didn't smile back, but something in his chest eased. Just a little. Meanwhile, across town in a dim garage behind an old warehouse, Stegman sat with his boys. Miko had an ice pack on his face. Chuck hadn't hit him, but one of the other boys had helped make the story look better. Stegman stood over a table covered in papers, class schedules, teacher routines, janitor keys. He looked up. "We take him apart piece by piece," he said. "No more stunts, no more games. We ruin everything he touches." His eyes burned, not like a kid looking for fun, but like someone who'd found a target and didn't intend to miss. That evening, Chuck's boots hit the porch steps like tired hammers. He didn't notice the drizzle had started again. The light rain was more like mist clinging to his jacket and hair soaking slow. His knuckles ached from tension, not work. His eyes were heavy, not from lack of sleep, but from seeing too much behind the walls of that building. He fumbled for his keys like he always did. Right hand pocket, left coat, flap back, jeans pocket, and unlocked the door. The house was dark, but Emily always left one light on by the kitchen. Always. Not tonight. He paused. "Emily." No answer. He took 2 slow steps inside. The quiet wasn't natural, not just the absence of music or television. He checked the hallway. Her room was open. He moved toward it, not rushed, not panicked, just careful, methodical the way he'd moved through buildings in Kandahar and Mosul. The air was still. Her backpack was there, dropped near her desk like always. Shoes kicked off just inside the door. But the phone wasn't. Her phone was never far from her. Chuck's pulse ticked higher. He walked to the kitchen, checked the back door. Locked. Then the bathroom. Empty. Back to the living room. And then he saw it. A small, folded slip of paper on the coffee table, right in the center, almost like it wanted to be found. He picked it up with 2 fingers, careful not to smudge it just yet. No name, no signature, just a single line written in stiff, blocky letters. Now you know how it feels to lose what matters most. Now you know how it feels to lose what matters most. Chuck stared at the words. No name, no signature. But it didn't need one. The handwriting was stiff, almost too careful, like someone trying to disguise themselves but not smart enough to hide the anger behind the ink. The phrasing was theatrical, personal, bitter. He didn't blink, didn't move. But behind his eyes, pieces began to fall into place like old combat maps unfolding in his head. Chuck folded the paper once, tucked it into his coat pocket. He didn't need time to figure out who did this. He already knew. It's him. Stegman. Right away, he was back at Lincoln High, but he didn't head to the front entrance. He slipped in through the side maintenance door he'd used during his first week. Keys still worked. Nobody ever bothered changing them. He checked the janitor's closet, scanning for prints, footprints, anything unusual. Nothing. Then he made his way through the empty halls, listening. It wasn't hard to figure out where to start. Stegman. The name clanged in his skull like a metal pipe in an empty room. Stegman wasn't just a bully or a troublemaker. He wasn't just smart. He was strategic, intentional, the kind of calculated vicious that Chuck had seen in men with ranks on their shoulders. Chuck started with the locker rooms, then the teacher's lounge, then behind the bleachers where some of the seniors gathered to smoke and act tough. He was patient. He moved quiet. He asked no questions aloud, just gathered fragments. A scuffed piece of Emily's notebook near the art room trash. A single bobby pin she always wore clipped to a fire extinguisher hook in the music wing, like a trail of breadcrumbs scattered by someone who wanted him to follow. Then Chuck stood in the school library, empty, dust-thick, long since ignored. He sat at the same table where he used to read with Linda after class. The table was scratched, now the corner chipped. He closed his eyes, his fists clenched on the wood. This wasn't about discipline anymore. It wasn't about teaching kids to find themselves. It was about bringing his daughter home. Chuck walked the school like a ghost. Every hallway was a memory, every classroom a battlefield. Then he found it on the wall outside the old martial arts room. A symbol, painted in black spray, twisted like a broken bone. It looked almost like the kanji for honor, but altered, bent, corrupted. Below it, a phrase scrawled in red marker: false teacher, false warrior. Chuck stared at it for a long time. He remembered the day that symbol had first been painted inside that room back when he and Linda had cleaned it together before their first tournament. She'd painted it slow, carefully, like it meant something. Because it did. And now someone had desecrated it. He turned the corner and saw more. Ripped photos of him from newspaper clippings burned at the edges. A video playing on a loop on one of the school's old AV carts. A deep fake showing his face on a man beating a student. Lies. All of it. But powerful lies. The kind that spread fast. Chuck followed the trail. It led him to the far wing of the school, the old building nobody used since the flooding 5 years ago. Mold stains on the walls, old desks stacked like forgotten bones. Room 115. The door was slightly open. Chuck stepped inside. The air was thick, wet. He saw candles burnt out, maybe used for filming. scraps of paper on the floor, and in the center of the room, something that made him stop. Emily's phone. He didn't pick it up. That night, with the school quiet and the city asleep, he entered the gym. The same steps, the same hallway, and at the end, the same door. He opened it. Inside, someone had lit the room soft yellow light from battery lamps. Mats on the floor. But everything was wrong. The wall that once held the honor symbol had been painted black. And in the middle of the room, a single chair. The door shut behind him with a soft click, but it echoed in Chuck's chest like a drum. The air in the room was warmer than the rest of the school. Not cozy, warm, heavy, stale, like something had been breathing in the dark for too long. The faint scent of old sweat and melted plastic hung in the air, mixed with the sour note of teenage cologne. Somewhere in the back, a low hum came from a battery-powered lamp balanced on an overturned bucket. Light spilled across the mats, flickering just enough to make the shadows dance. The place was twisted. It used to be a room of discipline, structure, patience. Now it felt like a trap set by someone who understood what this room had once meant and knew how to turn it into something else. Something poisonous. And then he saw her. Emily. She was tied to the chair, not tight, not cruel, but enough. Her ankles bound with duct tape, her wrists behind her back. A cloth clean had been wrapped once around her mouth, but now hung loose at her neck. Her eyes were wide but not wet, chest rising and falling fast. She was scared, but not broken. Chuck moved toward her. "Hey, I got you. You're okay." Her body flinched at first, reflexive, like she couldn't believe it was really him. But then she let out a noise that was half sob, half breath. He knelt in front of her and carefully peeled the tape away. She leaned into him the moment she could, her head pressed against his chest. "I'm okay, Dad," she whispered. "I'm okay." "Good girl," he said, his voice low, rough from holding too much in too long. He was about to untie the last piece of tape when the voice came. "I wouldn't rush that." Chuck didn't turn. He finished cutting the tie, then stood slowly and turned around. Peter Stegman stepped out from the shadows near the far wall. No weapons, no mask, no rage in his eyes, just something colder. "You came," Stegman said. Chuck's hands stayed at his sides. Wasn't much of a choice. "I figured you'd want to see it for yourself. The room, the chair, the symbol." Chuck looked around again. The walls were stripped bare, but near the back, someone had tried to repaint the honor kanji. Only it had been twisted, one stroke reversed, one line slashed through. "A symbol," Stegman continued, "means nothing if the man behind it is a fraud." Chuck didn't blink. "Emily," Stegman said almost softly, "is fine. I didn't hurt her. I just borrowed her. You ever think about how quick people are to assume the worst of someone like me?" "You earned it," Chuck said. His voice didn't rise. He didn't move. Stegman walked toward the edge of the mat, stopped just before stepping on it like he still respected the space in some way. "Do you remember my father?" Chuck tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing. "Your father." Stegman's jaw clenched. His voice rose, not loud but sharp. "You don't even remember, do you?" Chuck shook his head slowly. "I've known a lot of men in my life, son. You're gonna have to be more specific." Stegman took a step forward. His tone snapped like a wire under pressure. Richard Stegman." Chuck froze for a second, then blinked. "Richard." Stegman stared at him like he was looking at something broken. You really didn't know. All these years. You never once thought about him. Chuck's face stayed unreadable, but there was a flicker of memory, of recognition. Richard? Yeah. I knew a Richard Stegman. We trained together. Back in the old days. You trained together, Stegman repeated, voice thick with disgust. He was your best damn friend, and you left him behind like trash. Chuck's brow furrowed. That's not how I remember it. You don't remember it at all. Stegman snapped, fists clenched at his sides. Because you walked out of that chapter with your golden ticket and forgot the man you stole it from. Chuck stared. Stole. Stegman's voice dropped, but the rage stayed under every word. You took his place, his future. You got the academy spot, the shot at something real, and he got a bottle in a broken home. You think he drank himself to death for fun? Chuck stepped back slowly, processing the weight behind each sentence. I didn't take anything. I was picked. He quit before the final tryout. He quit because of you, Stegman shouted. Because he knew he'd never win against the perfect Chuck Norris, the golden boy, the good soldier. Chuck closed his eyes. For a moment he saw Richard again, 17, wild-eyed, faster than anyone on the mat, but never in control. The kid with power in his fists, but fire in his pride. I didn't steal anything from your father, Chuck said. He quit before the fight ever happened. He said the school chose you over him because you were the safe bet, Stegman said. Because you played the good soldier and smiled for the board. He said they never saw his real strength. He failed himself, Chuck said. Stegman's jaw twitched. He looked younger suddenly, just a kid again, one who'd been force-fed bitterness since he could walk. Chuck's voice softened just a little. Richard was talented, more than me in some ways, but he couldn't get past his own reflection. That's why he lost. Not because I beat him, because he couldn't stay in the room long enough to try. Stegman stepped forward, eyes burning. You don't know what it was like growing up in that house. Hearing about you every damn time he looked at me. Every time he couldn't hold down a job, it was your fault. Every bruise on my mom's face had your name on it. Every insult, every drunken shout. Chuck's throat tightened, but he didn't speak. So I thought, Stegman said, almost whispering now, if I could make you feel even a fraction of that, then maybe I'd be free of it. Chuck stared at him, eyes tired, shoulders heavy. You thought taking Emily would even the scales. Stegman didn't answer. You thought doing to me what your father did to himself would somehow make it right. Chuck stepped forward now, calm, steady. You didn't hurt her because you're not like him. Not really. You're angry, yeah. You're lost. But you didn't hither. You didn't starve her. You just wanted me to feel it. The weight of it. Stegman's eyes darted, flickered. I don't want your pity. You don't have it, Chuck said. I have your truth. That's all. Emily had stood up now, standing just behind her father, watching. Chuck reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thin file, old yellowed, folded in the middle. He held it out. Stegman didn't take it. It's your father's evaluation, Chuck said. From the state tryouts, the one he never showed you. Why would I want to see that? Chuck dropped it on the mat between them. Because you need to see he wasn't cheated. He was seen, completely. And they chose me not because I was better, but because I stayed when it mattered. I stayed even when it got hard. Stegman stared at the file like it was radioactive. I spent 20 years thinking about how I could have helped him more, Chuck said. I lost my best friend because neither of us knew how to speak past our pride. Silence hung thick in the room. Chuck took one final step forward, standing on the edge of the mat. You still have time. You don't have to carry his ghost around forever.
Stegman's lips parted like he wanted to say something, but no words came. Emily stepped out now, closer to him. "Let it go," she said. Not loud, not soft, just real. Something cracked in Stegman's face, a tiny twitch, then another. He looked at her, then at Chuck, then back at the chair in the center of the room. He turned. He walked to the back wall, sat down against it, and covered his face with both hands. No tears, no screams, just silence. Surrender. They didn't call the cops that night. Chuck led Emily out of the dojo with his hand on her shoulder. She didn't look back. The porch light buzzed softly in the night, casting a pale circle on the front steps. It was past midnight when Chuck and Emily got home, both moving like they'd walked through a fire that hadn't quite burned them, but left a heat in their bones they couldn't shake. Emily didn't speak as she stepped into the house. She went straight to her room, her hand brushing along the hallway wall the way she used to when she was little. Chuck stood at the door for a long moment after she disappeared behind it, listening. When the door clicked shut and the lock slid into place, he finally exhaled. He turned toward the kitchen, his knees tight, his back stiff. The chair at the table creaked under his weight as he sat down. He took a breath, pulled a pen from the drawer, and started writing. The statement was for the principal, not the police. No charges pressed, no names dropped, just facts. Emily had been found unharmed. The situation had de-escalated without violence. No threat remained. But at the bottom of the page, where most men would have written, "Case closed," Chuck wrote something else. Recommendation: Peter Stegman be placed in a supervised intervention program under my instruction. No expulsion, no arrest, structured reform. He didn't explain why, didn't need to. On Monday, Stegman showed up at school. He walked through the doors like a shadow that had bled out of the walls. No smirk, no entourage, just him. Some students moved aside, others stared. Chuck saw him from across the courtyard. Their eyes met, but neither spoke. Stegman went to class. Every period. No skipping, no mouthing off. When it came time for Chuck's after-school martial arts program, the one that had slowly grown into something real over the past few months, he showed up there too. He didn't bow, didn't speak, just sat cross-legged near the back wall, watching. Chuck didn't acknowledge him either. He ran class as usual. But that night when he locked up, he noticed the mats had been swept clean, and someone had taped a ripped corner of the old "Discipline is Strength" banner back to the gym wall. It went like that for a while. Stegman didn't try to be part of anything. He didn't smile, didn't fake it. But he kept showing up, and Chuck kept letting him. There was no big speech, no apology, no public confession. But something was different. One afternoon, a freshman, small kid, glasses too big for his face, got cornered outside the science wing by two older boys. Nothing new. The teachers had stopped noticing. Everyone had, really. Except Stegman. He didn't throw a punch. He didn't shout. He just walked over, stood between them, and stared until they left. Chuck didn't say a word about it in class. But the next day, he handed Stegman a folded gi, the old kind, the kind they didn't use anymore, and a piece of black tape. "You want to step on the mat," Chuck said, voice low. "You earn your place. This tape doesn't mean rank. It means responsibility." Stegman looked down at the tape, then back up.
He didn't take it. Not yet. But he didn't walk away either. Weeks passed. Emily started smiling again. Not the forced kind. The real kind. She brought her camera back out, started taking photos of the school like she used to, capturing the cracks, the shadows, and the tiny signs of healing no one else noticed. She didn't talk about the night in the dojo. Chuck didn't make her. But sometimes when they sat on the porch together, she'd glance over and say, "You were right." He was hurting. And Chuck would nod, say nothing, and just watch the horizon with her until the sun disappeared behind the rooftops. One morning before first period, Principal Lanning called Chuck into his office. He closed the door and leaned back with a sigh. "I don't know what kind of magic you pulled," he said, "but that kid, he's different." Chuck just raised an eyebrow. "I mean, hell, he's still got attitude," Lanning went on. "But he turns his homework in now. I saw him help Ms. Donner pick up her books last week. That's not nothing." Chuck nodded once. "It's a start." Lanning rubbed his face, chuckling softly. "You're a strange kind of teacher, Norris. You let him take your daughter, and now you're asking to keep him in class." Chuck looked him square in the eye. "If we keep tossing broken kids out of the boat, don't complain when they learn how to swim back and burn it down." The principal didn't answer right away. Then he said, "All right, we'll keep him in the program, but you watch him close." Chuck stood. "I already am." By spring, the dojo had changed. The mats were new. The walls were freshly painted, not clean, not fancy, but solid. There was no banner this time, no flashy sayings, just quiet. The students changed too. They weren't perfect. Fights still happened. Some quit, some didn't care, but others stayed. Others learned. And Chuck stayed too. He'd planned to leave after a semester, maybe write a book, spend more time fishing. But this place wasn't ready to be left, and he wasn't ready to walk away from it. He started reworking the curriculum, not just the techniques, but the heart of it. Every kid who walked in had to learn the basics: how to fall, how to stand up, but also how to breathe when they were scared, how to speak when they were ashamed, how to look someone in the eye after they'd done something wrong. He didn't teach them how to win fights. He taught them how not to become one. Stegman showed up every day now, still quiet, still carrying more weight than a teenager should, but different. One afternoon after class, Chuck found him alone, standing by the locker room mirror. "Why didn't you just report me?" Stegman asked, eyes on his reflection. Chuck folded his arms. "What would have that done?" "Put me away." Chuck nodded. "Yeah, for a while. Maybe." Stegman turned around, voice tight. "I don't get it. I did everything to destroy you." Chuck met his eyes. "You tried to carry your father's pain. I don't blame you for falling under it." Stegman didn't reply. Chuck stepped closer, voice even. "You want to be a man? Then start by choosing to be better than him." Stegman looked down, then slowly nodded. It wasn't much, but it was honest. On the last day of the school year, Chuck stayed late. The halls were quiet. He went to the main office and asked the janitor for one thing: an old photo, torn, faded, but still there in the records. It showed two boys in white gi uniforms, one with a shy grin, the other all fire and swagger. They stood side by side, hands behind their backs, barefoot on the mat. Young, bright, hopeful. Chuck took the photo and taped it up in the new dojo, right on the wall where the symbol had once been painted. Below it,
He scribbled a short line on a strip of masking tape. Don't let the past decide who you become. That evening, Chuck walked home under the setting sun. Emily was already on the porch, camera in hand, coffee on the table. She smiled when she saw him. He sat down beside her. Neither of them said a word for a while, but the quiet was good now. It didn't hurt anymore. And when Emily finally said, "You're not just a teacher, you know," Chuck just nodded. "I know," he said, "but this time it's enough." Hey friends. Wow. If you're still here at the end of this story, first off, thank you. I don't say that lightly. This one meant a lot to me, and I think if you've made it this far, it probably meant something to you too. You know, when I started writing this, I didn't just want to tell a story about a tough guy fixing a broken school. I wanted to explore what real strength looks like. And as we saw with Chuck, it's not about fists or fame. It's about showing up when it's hard, about listening, about choosing not to give up on people even when they've given up on themselves. What hit me most was the journey between Chuck and Stegman. It's easy to write someone like Stegman off as just another bad kid, but look deeper, and you see years of pain inherited from a father who never healed. And that's the point, right? Sometimes the damage we carry isn't even ours. It's passed down, but that doesn't mean we have to keep carrying it. Chuck didn't win by defeating Stegman. He won by refusing to become the enemy Stegman expected. That's legacy. That's redemption. That's what healing really looks like. And honestly, that dojo, those quiet porch talks, that photo on the wall, it reminded me that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stay. Stay and fight the slow fight. The one that doesn't get applause but changes lives. If you felt something while reading this story, I'd love to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me which moment stuck with you most. Let's talk about it. I'll be in there with you like always. And hey, don't forget, don't let the past decide who you become. See you in the next one.